The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in Boston, Massachusetts, already dampened by the October rain of 1878, and Maeve Kingston knew, before opening it, that her entire world was about to change forever. She sat at the small wooden table in the boarding house kitchen, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the crisp paper. The handwriting was neat, almost mechanical, and the words struck her like a physical blow. "Dear Miss Kingston, I write to inform you that I am in need of a wife to manage my household in Nevada Territory. I am a rancher of considerable means, but spend most of my time away from the main house due to the demands of my cattle operation. You will have a comfortable home, financial security, and independence. I do not expect companionship or affection, merely competent household management. If these terms are acceptable, arrangements will be made for your travel to Pyramid City. Sincerely, Owen Patterson." Maeve read the letter 3 times, each reading making her stomach sink lower. This was not what she had imagined when she had placed her advertisement in the Matrimonial Gazette. She had hoped for kindness, perhaps friendship that might grow into something more. Instead, she was being offered a business arrangement with a man who explicitly stated he did not want her companionship. But what choice did she have? At 23 years old, she had already buried both parents to consumption and her younger brother to a factory accident. The boarding house where she worked as a seamstress barely paid enough for her tiny room, and winter was coming. Mrs. Henderson, the landlady, had already hinted that she might need to raise the rent. "You look like someone just walked over your grave," said Clara, one of the other boarders, settling into the chair across from her. "Bad news." Maeve folded the letter carefully. "A marriage proposal of sorts." "Of sorts?" Clara's eyebrows rose. "Either it is or it is not. He wants a housekeeper who happens to be his wife. He was quite clear that he does not want anything more than that." Clara whistled low. "Well, that is honest at least. Most men promise you the moon and stars, and then you discover they just wanted a cook and a nursemaid. At least this one is upfront about his expectations." "I suppose so." Maeve stared out the rain-streaked window, "but I had hoped for more. Hope does not pay the rent, dear, and winter is coming. You have to think practically." Maeve knew Clara was right. She had been thinking practically her entire life. When her mother fell ill, she had taken in sewing to pay for medicine. When her father followed her mother to the grave 6 months later, she had sold their few possessions to bury him properly and pay off his debts. When her brother Daniel died under the wheels of a textile machine, she had used his small death benefit to buy a train ticket away from the factory district, where every corner held painful memories. That evening, she wrote her acceptance letter by candlelight, her hand steady despite the ache in her chest. She told herself that security was enough, that a woman in her position could not afford romantic notions. She had read enough novels to know that love was a luxury for women with dowries and social positions, not for orphaned seamstresses with calloused fingers and empty pockets. The journey west took 2 weeks. Maeve spent the endless hours on the train watching America transform outside her window. The crowded eastern cities gave way to farmland, then to vast prairies that seemed to stretch beyond the edge of the world. She had never seen so much open space, never imagined that the sky could be so impossibly large. She shared a compartment with a family heading to California and an older woman named Mrs. Abbott who had lived in Nevada for 30 years. Mrs. Abbott was full of stories about the silver mines and the wild characters who populated the territory. "Pyramid City," Mrs. Abbott said when Maeve mentioned her destination. "Oh, that is cattle country. The big ranches out there run thousands of head. Hard country, though, not like the soft East. You will need backbone to survive out there." "I have backbone," Maeve said quietly, thinking of everything she had already survived. I do not doubt it, dear. Any woman who comes west as a mail-order bride has courage, whatever else she might have. Mrs. Abbott patted her hand. Just remember that the West changes people. The woman who arrives is never quite the same as the woman who stays. The train reached the depot nearest to Pyramid City on a bright November morning. Maeve stepped off onto the platform, her small trunk containing everything she owned bumping against her legs. The air was different here, thin and crisp and scented with sage. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. A weathered man in dusty clothes approached her, hat in hand. Miss Kingston? Yes, name is Jack Freeman. Mr. Patterson sent me to collect you and take you to the ranch. It is about a 3-hour drive. The wagon ride gave Maeve her first real view of Nevada territory. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rocks and stubborn plants that clung to life in seemingly impossible conditions. Jackrabbits bounded across the road, and once she saw what Jack identified as a golden eagle soaring overhead. Mr. Patterson has one of the biggest spreads in the territory, Jack said, his eyes on the horses. Good man, though he keeps to himself mostly. Works harder than any 3 men I know. Out from before dawn most days, riding the ranges, checking the herds, mending fences. This is not easy country for cattle, but he makes it work. Does he come to the main house often? Maeve asked. Jack gave her a sideways glance. Not much, to be honest. There is a lined shack on the North Range where he stays most nights, closer to where the work is, he says. So it was true. She really would be alone. The reality of it settled over her like a heavy blanket. The ranch house appeared in the distance, a sprawling structure of timber and stone that looked like it had grown out of the land itself. It was larger than Maeve had expected, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides and tall windows that caught the afternoon light. Outbuildings dotted the property: a barn, a bunkhouse, several sheds and corrals that held more horses than Maeve had ever seen in one place. Jack helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk to the porch. Someone will be along to help you get settled. Mr. Patterson is out on the range but said he would try to make it back for supper. Try. Not that he would be there, but that he would try. Maeve lifted her chin and smiled. Thank you for the ride, Mr. Freeman. The front door opened before she could knock. A small, round woman with gray hair and shrewd eyes looked her up and down. So you are the new missus. Come in, come in. I am Rosie Martinez. I cook here and help with the house. My husband Eduardo is the head wrangler. The interior of the house was surprisingly comfortable. Someone had taken care with the furnishings, choosing pieces that were well made and practical, but not without beauty. Colorful woven rugs covered the wooden floors, and the walls held landscape paintings that captured the wild Nevada scenery. Mr. Patterson's mother decorated most of this before she passed, Rosie said, watching Maeve take it all in. She had good taste. Your room is upstairs, the master bedroom. Where does Mr. Patterson sleep? Maeve asked. There is a small room off the study downstairs. He uses that when he is here. Rosie's expression was carefully neutral, but Maeve caught a flicker of something that might have been sympathy. I will show you around. The house had 6 bedrooms upstairs, all empty except for basic furniture. The master bedroom was lovely, with windows that overlooked the mountains and a bed with a carved wooden headboard. Someone had placed fresh flowers on the dresser, and the sheets smelled of lavender. Supper is at 6, Rosie said. I will ring the bell. Mr. Patterson said he would be here tonight to meet you properly. Maeve unpacked her few belongings and changed into her best dress, a deep blue wool that brought out her eyes. She pinned up her dark hair carefully, studying her reflection in the mirror. She was not beautiful, she knew that. Pretty enough, perhaps, with clear skin and even features, but nothing remarkable. Certainly nothing that would make a man like Owen Patterson want to spend time with her if he had already decided he did not need companionship. The dinner bell rang promptly at 6. Maeve made her way downstairs, her hands cold despite the warmth of the house. She could hear voices from the dining room, Rosie, and a man speaking in low tones. She paused in the doorway. A tall man stood with his back to her, speaking to Rosie in Spanish. He was broad-shouldered and lean, his dark hair slightly too long and curling at his collar. Dusty work clothes hung on his frame, and when he turned at Rosie's nod in Maeve's direction, she saw a face that was striking rather than handsome, all strong bones and sun-weathered skin, with eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. Miss Kingston. His voice was deep and rough, like he did not use it often. I am Owen Patterson. Welcome to the ranch. He did not smile, did not move to take her hand or offer any gesture of warmth. He simply stood there, this stranger who was now her husband in the eyes of the law, looking at her with an expression she could not read. Thank you, Maeve said, lifting her chin. The house is lovely. My mother would be glad to hear that. Please sit. You must be hungry after your journey. The meal was awkward and stilted. Owen ate mechanically, answering her questions with brief, factual responses. Yes, the ranch ran about 5,000 head of cattle. Yes, the winters could be harsh. Yes, she should feel free to make any changes to the house she thought necessary. He looked at her directly when he spoke, but offered nothing personal, nothing that might bridge the vast distance between them. I will be heading back to the North Range after supper, he said, pushing back his empty plate. There is a sick heifer I need to check on. I will be gone most of the week. I see. Maeve kept her voice even. Is there anything you need me to do while you are away? Rosie can guide you. She knows how everything works. If you need anything, Eduardo can ride out to find me, but I am sure you will manage fine. He stood, nodding to her politely as if she were a business acquaintance rather than his wife. Good night, Miss Kingston. It is Mrs. Patterson now, Maeve said quietly. He paused, something flickering across his face too quickly for her to identify. Yes. Good night, Mrs. Patterson. She listened to his footsteps cross the hall, heard the front door open and close. A few minutes later, horse hooves clattered on the hard, packed earth outside, fading into the distance. He is not a bad man, Rosie said softly from the doorway. Just a hurt one. Maeve looked up. What happened to him? That is his story to tell, not mine. But I will say this, he was not always so closed off. Life has a way of building walls around people, especially out here. Whether those walls come down again depends on a lot of things. He was very clear in his letter that he did not want companionship. People say a lot of things when they are protecting themselves. Rosie began clearing the dishes. Sometimes what they say and what they need are two different things entirely. The first week passed in a blur of learning. Maeve threw herself into understanding the household, learning where everything was kept, how Rosie liked the kitchen organized, what supplies needed ordering from town. She discovered that Owen had been paying Rosie to do most of the household management, and while the older woman was competent, she was clearly relieved to hand over many of the tasks. I am a cook, not a bookkeeper, Rosie said with a laugh as Maeve took over the household accounts. Mr. Patterson never complained, but I know I am not good with the numbers. Maeve had always been good with numbers. Within a few days, she had reorganized the accounts, identified areas where they were overspending, and created a more efficient system for ordering supplies. It felt good to be useful, to have purpose beyond simply existing. Owen returned briefly on Thursday evening, ate supper in near silence, and was gone again before dawn. Maeve caught only glimpses of him, a tall figure crossing the yard, a shadow in the barn. He was like a ghost in his own home, present but not really there. Does he ever stay? She asked Eduardo one morning as the wrangler helped her understand which horses were gentle enough for her to ride. Eduardo, a weather-beaten man of about 50 with kind eyes, shrugged. Not much anymore. Before his father died, he was here more, but that was 5 years ago now. After that, he just started working harder and harder, staying out on the range longer and longer. Some men drown their pain in whiskey. Mr. Patterson drowns his in work. What happened to his father? Accident during a drive. Stampede. It was quick, at least. Eduardo patted the nose of a gentle mare. This is Daisy. She would be a good horse for you to learn on. Over the next weeks, Maeve established a routine. She managed the household, learned to ride Daisy on short trips around the ranch, and gradually got to know the handful of ranch hands who worked the property. Most of them were respectful and friendly, clearly surprised to find the boss had acquired a wife. "Did not think Mr. Patterson was the marrying type," said Sam, a young cowboy who could not have been more than 20. "He always seemed married to the ranch." Maeve learned that Owen had built the ranch from almost nothing after his father's death. He had taken on enormous debt to buy out his neighbor's struggling operations, gambled on breeding better cattle, and worked himself nearly to death proving that ranching could succeed in this harsh country. He had succeeded, but at the cost of everything else in his life. She caught glimpses of who he might have been in the things he had left behind. Books in the study revealed a man who loved poetry and history. A half-finished carving on his desk showed real artistic talent. Letters from his mother, which Maeve found while cleaning, spoke of a boy who had been curious and warm and full of dreams. But that boy had become a man who could barely meet her eyes over dinner on the rare occasions he came home. December arrived with snow that transformed the harsh landscape into something ethereal and beautiful. Maeve stood on the porch one morning, wrapped in a thick shawl, watching the sun rise over white-capped mountains. The cold bit through her clothes, but she did not mind. There was something clarifying about the chill, something that made her feel more alive than she had in years. "You should be inside." She turned to find Owen standing a few feet away, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. She had not heard him approach. He was dressed for riding, heavy coat and leather gloves, hat pulled low against the wind. "I wanted to see the sunrise," she said. "It is beautiful here." He looked out at the view as if seeing it for the first time. "I suppose it is. You get used to it after a while." "I do not think I ever could. Get used to it, I mean. It is too magnificent to take for granted." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the careful mask he wore. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect? Someone harder, more practical?" "Someone who would see this as purely a business arrangement and not care about sunrises or beauty." "I do see it as a business arrangement," Maeve said quietly. "That is what you asked for in your letter. But that does not mean I cannot also appreciate where I live now." He studied her face for a long moment. "You have done well with the household. Rosie showed me the new account system. It is efficient. Thank you. And Eduardo says you have been learning to ride. I thought I should know how to get around the property, in case of emergency." "That is sensible." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. "I will be staying at the house through Christmas. Some of the men go home to their families, so the work is lighter. I thought it would be appropriate, given the circumstances." "You do not have to stay on my account. You are my wife. People will talk if I am not here for Christmas." His wife. The words should have meant something, but said in that flat, dutiful tone, they were just sounds. Maeve wrapped her shawl tighter. "I would not want to cause gossip." "Neither would I." He turned to go, then paused. "The sunrise is beautiful. You were right about that. It was not much, but it was the first real thing he had said to her. Maeve held onto it like a candle flame in the dark. Christmas preparations gave Maeve something to focus on. She and Rosie made traditional foods, decorated the house with evergreen branches and holly berries that Maeve found growing wild near a creek. She even persuaded Eduardo to cut down a small pine tree, which they set up in the front room. "Mr. Patterson has not had a Christmas tree since his mother died," Rosie said, looking at the decorated pine with satisfaction. "This is good. The house needs life again." Owen returned on Christmas Eve as promised. He stopped short when he saw the tree, covered in strings of popcorn and dried orange slices, a carved wooden star at its top. "I hope you do not mind," Maeve said quickly. It seemed appropriate for the season. "My mother loved Christmas trees." His voice was rough. "She would make one every year, decorating it with whatever she could find. The star at the top is the same one she used. I found it in the storage room. I hope it was all right to use it. More than all right." He reached out as if to touch one of the branches, then let his hand fall. "Thank you for doing this." That evening they sat in the front room after supper, the tree glowing in the firelight. Owen had accepted a glass of whiskey, and Maeve sipped hot cider while they sat in surprisingly comfortable silence. "Tell me about Boston," Owen said suddenly. "What was it like?" The question surprised her. It was the first personal thing he had asked. Crowded, noisy, gray, especially in winter. The factory smoke makes everything dirty. "Do you miss it?" "I miss my family. But they are all gone now, so there is nothing to miss really, just memories." "I am sorry for your losses, and I for yours. Rosie told me about your parents." He took a long drink of whiskey. "They loved this ranch. My father died building it, and my mother died of a broken heart 6 months later, though the doctor called it pneumonia. They had dreams for this place, big dreams. I've tried to make those dreams real, to make their sacrifices mean something. I think you have succeeded. The ranch is thriving." "At what cost?" The question came out bitter. "I have a successful ranch and nothing else. No family, no friends really, just cattle and land and work that never ends." "Is that why you sent for a wife? To try to have something beyond the ranch?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw such pain in his eyes that it took her breath away. "I sent for a wife because I am 30 years old and tired of being alone. But I have forgotten how to be anything other than alone. I have forgotten how to let people close. So I thought if I hired someone to manage the household, gave them security and independence, it would be enough. They would not expect anything from me that I could not give. And now I think I may have been unfair to you. You deserve more than a husband who is never here, who cannot offer you anything but an empty house and a business arrangement." Maeve set down her cider carefully. "I knew what I was agreeing to when I came here. You were honest in your letter about what you wanted and what you did not want. I accepted those terms. But what did you want, Maeve? What did you hope for when you answered matrimonial advertisements?" It was the first time he had used her given name, and hearing it in his rough voice sent warmth through her chest. "I hoped for kindness, for partnership, for a chance at a life that was not just survival but something more. I did not expect love. I am practical enough to know that love is rare and precious and not something to count on, but I hoped for friendship at least. I do not know if I can give you even that. I have spent 5 years building walls, keeping everyone at a distance. I do not know how to let them down. Then maybe we can learn together. We are both alone, Owen. We have both lost people we loved. Maybe we can figure out how to be less alone, even if it is just in small ways." He stared into the fire for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I would like that. I do not know if I can do it, but I would like to try." It was a beginning. Small and fragile, but real. Owen stayed through the week between Christmas and New Year, and Maeve began to see glimpses of the man behind the walls. He showed her the ranch in detail, taking her on long rides through the winter landscape, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about the land. He spoke about his parents with obvious love, about his father's dreams and his mother's strength. He showed her the place where his father had died, a small canyon where they had placed a marker. "I come here sometimes when the work gets overwhelming," Owen admitted. "I tell him about the ranch, about how it is doing, probably foolish, not foolish at all. We all need someone to talk to, even if they are only there in memory." He looked at her with an expression she was beginning to recognize as surprised appreciation. "You understand that? I talk to my brother sometimes. He died when he was only 16, crushed by machinery in a textile mill. I tell him about the West, about the big sky and the mountains. He would have loved it here. I am sorry you lost him so young. I am sorry you lost your father when you needed him most." They stood in the cold canyon, two people united by grief and loss, and something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but recognition, understanding, the beginning of a bridge across the distance that separated them. The new year arrived with a party at the neighboring ranch, the Triple Bar owned by Harold and Martha Simmons. Owen had initially tried to decline the invitation, but Maeve had convinced him that they should go, that people would expect to meet his new wife. The Simmons ranch house was packed with neighbors from across the territory, all curious to see Owen Patterson's mysterious mail-order bride. Maeve held her head high as Owen introduced her, shaking hands and making polite conversation even as she felt the weight of judgmental stares. "So you are from Boston?" Martha Simmons asked, looking Maeve up and down with barely concealed disdain. "How are you finding our rough Western ways?" "Invigorating," Maeve said with a smile, "and honest. People here say what they mean. Some would call that rudeness. I would call it refreshing." Owen's hand settled on the small of her back, a gesture of support that warmed her more than any fire could. "Maeve has taken to the ranch remarkably well. She rides, manages the household accounts better than I ever did, and is not afraid of hard work." The pride in his voice was unexpected and genuine. Maeve looked up at him and saw him smiling at her, really smiling for the first time since she had arrived. It transformed his whole face, making him look younger and softer and achingly handsome. Later, when the dancing started, Owen surprised her by asking for a waltz. "I am not very good," he warned as he led her onto the floor. "I have not danced since my mother's funeral. Then we will stumble through it together." He was better than he claimed, though clearly rusty, but his hand was warm on her waist, his other hand gentle as it held hers. They moved together awkwardly at first, then with increasing coordination as the music flowed around them. "Everyone is watching us," Owen murmured. "Let them watch. We are giving them what they came for, a look at the mysterious Mr. Patterson and his mail-order bride. Does it bother you?" "The gossip and speculation? Not particularly. I have survived far worse than small-town gossip." He pulled her slightly closer, close enough that she could smell sage and leather and something uniquely him. "You are stronger than I gave you credit for. And you are kinder than you want people to know." The music ended, but they stood for a moment longer, looking at each other. Something passed between them, a recognition that this arrangement between them was becoming something more, something neither of them had planned but both of them needed. January brought bitter cold and snow that piled in drifts against the buildings. Owen stayed close to the main house, working on equipment repairs in the barn, checking on the horses, planning for the spring cattle operations. He took his meals in the main house now, and gradually their dinners grew less awkward, filled with conversation about the ranch, about books they had read, about their different experiences growing up. Maeve learned that Owen loved astronomy and would often spend clear nights identifying constellations. He learned that she had a gift for drawing and encouraged her to sketch the landscape. They developed small rituals coffee together in the morning before he headed out to work, evenings by the fire reading or talking, companionable silence that was comfortable rather than strained. "I think I am starting to remember how to be human," Owen said one evening as they sat by the fire, his tone half joking but his eyes serious. "I had almost forgotten what it was like to have someone to talk to, someone who cares about more than just cattle prices and fence repairs." "I know what you mean. I had been alone for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to have someone ask about my day, to have conversations that mattered." He reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. It was the most deliberate touch he had initiated, and Maeve felt her breath catch. His hand was calloused and warm, much larger than hers, and the simple contact sent electricity through her entire body. "I am glad you came here, Maeve. I know I was not welcoming at first, and I am sorry for that. But I am glad you stayed, glad you gave me a chance to figure out how to do this." "I am glad too." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the fire burn down to embers. It was not a declaration of love, not yet, but it was intimacy of a different kind, trust, connection. The foundation of something that could grow into more. February brought the first signs of spring. Owen began preparing for calving season, which he explained would be the busiest and most critical time of the year. Maeve watched him work, admiring his competence and dedication. He was always the first one up and the last one to bed, checking on expectant cows throughout the night, helping difficult births, making sure every calf had the best chance of survival. She began bringing him hot coffee and food when he stayed out late in the calving sheds, wrapping herself in heavy coats to walk through the cold night air. The first time she appeared with a thermos and sandwiches, he looked at her as if she had hung the moon. "You did not have to do this." "I know, but I wanted to. You have to eat, and you will not stop to do it unless someone makes you." He accepted the food gratefully, and she stayed to watch him work. There was something beautiful about the way he handled the nervous cows, his movements gentle and confident, his voice low and soothing. When a calf was finally born, wet and wobbling, she felt tears prick her eyes at the miracle of it. "Every time," Owen said softly, watching the mother clean her newborn, "every single time I am amazed by it. New life in this harsh land. It feels like hope. It is hope." He turned to her, backlit by the lantern light, his face shadowed and beautiful. "You are hope too. You came here when everything was dead and frozen, and you brought life back to this house to me. I was dead inside, Maeve. I had been dead for 5 years, but you made me want to live again." She stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Owen, I am falling in love with you." The words came out rough and honest. "I know that was not part of our agreement. I know I said I did not want companionship or affection. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. I need you. I need your laughter and your strength and the way you look at sunrises like they are miracles. I need the way you see good in this hard land and good in me when I had forgotten I had any good left." Maeve reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of several days' beard, the warmth of his skin. "I am falling in love with you too. I think I started the day you told me about your father, when you let me see past the walls you had built. I have been falling ever since." He kissed her then, pulling her close with hands that trembled slightly. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he could not quite believe she was real. Then it deepened, becoming hungry and desperate, 5 years of loneliness pouring into the connection between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I do not deserve you. Yes, you do. We both deserve happiness, Owen. We have both earned it through everything we have survived. That night marked a turning point. Owen moved his things from the small room off the study to the master bedroom, and Maeve discovered that her husband was tender and passionate in equal measure, that the walls he had built around his heart extended to physical intimacy as well, but that he was willing to let them down for her. They learned each other slowly, with patience and growing confidence. Owen was attentive and careful, making sure she was comfortable, asking what she liked, sharing his own preferences. It was nothing like the cold, clinical descriptions Maeve had heard from other women about their marital duties. This was warmth and connection, pleasure and intimacy that went beyond the physical. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Owen's arm around her, Maeve felt more complete than she had in years. This was what she had secretly hoped for when she had answered the matrimonial advertisement, not just security or a roof over her head, but this profound connection with another human being. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, his voice sleepy and content. "That I am happy. Truly happy, maybe for the first time since I was a child and my family was still whole. I am happy too." He pulled her closer. "I had forgotten what this felt like. Thank you for reminding me." Spring arrived in earnest in March, transforming the brown landscape into something green and alive. Wildflowers bloomed in impossible profusion, painting the hills with color. Owen took Maeve on long rides to see the beauty, packing picnic lunches and spending entire afternoons exploring the ranch together. "I want to show you everything," he said one morning as they saddled their horses. "All my favorite places, all the spots where I go when I need to think or find peace. I want to share this land with you the way my father shared it with my mother." He took her to a high mesa where they could see for miles in every direction, the mountains purple in the distance. The valley spread below them like a green carpet. He showed her a hidden spring where wild horses came to drink, the animals beautiful and free. He brought her to a canyon filled with ancient rock art, handprints and animals painted by people who had lived there long before. "My mother loved this place," Owen said, touching one of the red handprints gently. "She said it reminded her that people have always found ways to make beauty, even in harsh conditions. That creation is as much a part of human nature as survival." She was wise. She was. "I wish you could have known her. She would have loved you. Tell me about her. Tell me everything." So he did. They sat in the canyon as the sun moved across the sky, and Owen told her stories about his mother, how she had come west as a young bride, scared but determined, how she had learned to love the land, to see its harsh beauty, how she had been the heart of the ranch, the one who kept everyone's spirits up during hard times, how she had died so soon after Owen's father, as if she could not bear to be in the world without him. "They loved each other so much," Owen said. "When I was young, I thought all marriages were like that. Then I grew up and realized how rare it was, how lucky they were to have found each other. After my father died and I watched my mother fade away, I convinced myself that kind of love was not worth the pain. That it was better to be alone than to risk losing someone you loved that much. And now I think the pain is worth it, because the alternative is not living at all, just existing. You have taught me that, Maeve. You have taught me that opening yourself to love, even knowing it might hurt, is better than closing yourself off completely." Maeve took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I love you, Owen Patterson. I love your strength and your gentleness, and the way you care so deeply about everything even when you pretend you do not. I love the way you see beauty in this land, and the way you have let me into your heart even though it scared you. I love you too, more than I thought possible." He kissed her softly. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. The cattle drive in May was a massive undertaking, moving part of the herd to summer grazing lands in the mountains. Owen would be gone for 2 weeks, and the thought of being separated for that long made Maeve's chest ache. I could come with you, she suggested the night before he was set to leave. It is too rough, too dangerous. Cattle drives are unpredictable. I would spend the whole time worrying about you instead of focusing on the herd. I do not want to be without you for 2 weeks. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I do not want to be without you either, but this is part of ranching life. There will be times when we have to be apart. That is just the reality of it. I know, but that does not mean I have to like it. No, it does not. He kissed the top of her head. But I will come back to you, I promise. And then we will have the whole summer together. The 2 weeks felt like an eternity. Maeve threw herself into projects around the house, reorganizing the pantry, planting a vegetable garden, sewing new curtains for the bedrooms. But every night, the bed felt too big and empty without Owen's warmth beside her. When he finally rode in, dusty and exhausted but grinning, she ran off the porch and into his arms before he could even dismount properly. He laughed and held her tight, swinging her in a circle. I missed you, he said against her hair. Every single day, every single night. I counted the hours until I could come home to you. I missed you too. This house is not a home without you in it. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes serious despite his smile. Then I will try not to leave again unless absolutely necessary. The ranch is important, but you are more important. You are everything. That summer was the happiest time of Maeve's life. She and Owen worked together during the days, managing the ranch as partners. He taught her more about cattle and horses and land management, respecting her opinions and valuing her input. She implemented new systems for tracking inventory and expenses, saving them money and making operations more efficient. But it was the evenings and nights that Maeve treasured most. They would sit on the porch as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future. Owen spoke about expanding the herd, about breeding better horses, about all his dreams for the ranch. Maeve talked about wanting to learn more about the native plants, about possibly starting a small orchard, about teaching the ranch hands to read and write if any of them wanted to learn. You think about people, Owen observed one evening. I tend to focus on the practical side of things, on making the ranch profitable and efficient. But you see the human element, how we can make life better for everyone who works here. Both perspectives are important. The ranch needs to be profitable to survive, but it is also a community. Taking care of that community makes everything stronger. We make a good team. We do. One particularly hot July evening, as they lay in bed with the windows open to catch any breeze, Owen rolled onto his side to face her. I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with your answer. All right. Are you happy here? Truly happy? Not just content or making the best of things, but actually happy? Maeve thought about the question seriously before answering. Yes. I am happier than I ever imagined I could be. This life is hard sometimes and lonely when you are away, and nothing like what I knew in Boston. But it is real and honest and full of beauty. And I have you, which makes everything else worthwhile. So yes, I am truly happy. Relief flooded his face. Good, because I want you to have everything you need to be happy. If there is anything I can do, anything you want that you do not have, you only need to tell me. I have everything I need. I have you and this land and a purpose. What more could I want? A family, perhaps. The question came out tentative, almost shy. I know we have not talked about children. I did not want to assume. Maeve's heart swelled. She had been hoping he would want children but had been afraid to bring it up, unsure if he would want to expand their family. I would love to have children with you. Really?" His face lit up like a child's on Christmas morning. "You would want that, to have babies with me, to raise them here on the ranch, more than anything. I want to fill this big house with life and laughter. I want to give you the family you lost. I want to create something beautiful together." He kissed her deeply, and the kiss led to more, to making love with new intentionality, new purpose. Afterward, Owen held her close and whispered plans for the future into her hair: a son to teach ranching, a daughter to spoil, or maybe several of each, a whole brood of children to carry on the legacy his parents had started. Fall arrived with cooler weather and the massive task of preparing the ranch for winter. Owen and the hands repaired buildings, laid in supplies, moved the herd to winter pastures. Maeve preserved food from the garden, made sure the house was ready for the cold months ahead, and knitted warm clothes for everyone who lived on the ranch. In late September, she confirmed what she had begun to suspect: she was pregnant. The realization filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She wanted to tell Owen immediately, but decided to wait until she was sure, until she had seen the doctor in town. Dr. Harrison confirmed the pregnancy and told her the baby should arrive in late April or early May. "You are healthy and strong," he said. "I see no reason why you should not have an easy pregnancy and delivery." She told Owen that night after supper, simply placing his hand on her still flat stomach and saying, "There is a baby growing here, our baby." For a moment he just stared at her, processing the information. Then tears filled his eyes and he pulled her into his arms with a gentleness that made her own eyes sting. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. Overjoyed, terrified, grateful. All of those things at once. He cupped her face in his hands. Thank you for this gift, for giving me a family again. We are giving each other a family." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through fall and into winter. Owen became almost comically protective, not wanting Maeve to lift anything heavy or ride horses or do anything that might be remotely risky. She tolerated his hovering with good humor, understanding that it came from love and fear of losing another person he cared about. Christmas that year was magical. They decorated the tree together, and Owen gave her a beautiful cradle he had been secretly building in the barn workshop. It was carved with delicate flowers and birds, clearly a labor of love that had taken months. "It was my cradle," he explained. "My father made it for me, and his father made it for him. I have been restoring it, making it perfect for our baby." Maeve ran her fingers over the smooth wood, touched beyond words. "It is beautiful. The baby will be so loved, sleeping in something with so much history. This baby will be loved more than any child has ever been loved. I promise you that." The winter was long and cold, but Maeve did not mind. She was warm and safe and surrounded by love. Owen hardly left her side, conducting as much ranch business from the house as possible. They spent long evenings planning for the baby, choosing names, arguing good-naturedly about whether the child would have Owen's eyes or Maeve's, whether they should paint the nursery blue or yellow or leave it the soft cream it currently was. What if something goes wrong? Owen asked one night, his hand resting protectively on Maeve's growing belly. "What if I lose you like my father lost my mother?" "You will not lose me. I am strong, and Dr. Harrison says everything is progressing perfectly. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine and the baby will be fine. Promise me." "I promise to fight with everything I have to come back to you. That is all any of us can promise." It was enough. It had to be. Spring came early that year, the snow melting in March and wildflowers blooming by early April. Maeve was enormous now, moving slowly and tiring easily, but glowing with health and happiness. She and Rosie had prepared everything for the baby's soft blankets and tiny clothes, diapers made from old sheets, bottles and supplies for feeding. The labor started on a warm May morning, just as the sun was rising. Maeve woke Owen calmly and told him it was time. He nearly panicked, rushing around trying to gather things they had already prepared, but she talked him through it with patience born of her own nervousness. Dr. Harrison arrived by mid-morning, brought from town by Eduardo riding at breakneck speed. Rosie took over the birthing room with calm efficiency while Owen paced the hall outside, looking like he might be sick at any moment. The labor was long but not unbearable. Maeve focused on breathing through the contractions, on staying calm and strong. She thought about Owen waiting outside, about the baby she would soon hold, about the life they had built together from what had started as a cold business arrangement. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Maeve gave one final push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "A boy," Dr. Harrison announced, placing the squirming, wailing infant on her chest. "A healthy baby boy." Maeve looked down at her son, at his red face and dark hair and tiny perfect fingers, and felt love crash over her like a wave. "Hello, little one. We have been waiting for you." The doctor finished his work and cleaned up while Rosie helped Maeve get settled with the baby. Then Owen was allowed in, looking pale and terrified as he approached the bed. "Is he?" Owen's voice cracked. "Are you? We are both perfect. Come meet your son." Owen sank onto the bed beside her, staring at the baby with an expression of absolute wonder. "He is so small." "All babies are small. Here, hold him." She transferred the baby into Owen's arms and watched her strong, capable husband transform into someone utterly overwhelmed by love and responsibility. Tears streamed down Owen's face as he cradled his son, looking at the tiny face with reverence. "Hello, son," Owen whispered. "I am your father. I am going to do everything I can to be the kind of father you deserve. I am going to teach you about this land, about hard work and honor and treating people right. I am going to tell you about your grandparents, about the people who built this ranch and made all of this possible. And I am going to love you every single day of your life." "What should we name him?" Maeve asked softly. "What about Daniel, after your brother?" "And James for his middle name after my father, Daniel James Patterson." Maeve tested the name. "It is perfect." They spent the next hour simply marveling at their son, counting his fingers and toes, admiring his tiny features, taking turns holding him and trying to believe he was real. Maeve watched Owen with the baby and felt her heart expand to contain even more love than she had thought possible. The next months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming joy. Daniel was a good baby, healthy and strong, with lungs that could wake the entire house when he was hungry. Owen was a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending hours just holding his son and talking to him about the ranch. "You think he understands anything I am saying?" Owen asked one evening as he walked Daniel around the nursery, trying to soothe the fussy infant. "Probably not. But he knows your voice, knows you love him. That is what matters. I never thought I could love someone this much. I thought what I felt for you was the limit of what my heart could hold. But somehow there is more, enough for both of you and more besides." By the time Daniel was 6 months old, chubby and happy and starting to sit up on his own, Maeve realized she was pregnant again. This time, she told Owen immediately, and his reaction was the same mixture of joy and terror. "Another baby. We are going to have another baby." He picked up Daniel, who giggled at the sudden movement. "You are going to be a big brother, little man. What do you think about that?" Daniel gurgled and grabbed for Owen's nose, which seemed like approval enough. The second pregnancy was easier in some ways, harder in others. Maeve knew what to expect this time, but chasing after an active toddler while pregnant was exhausting. Owen hired additional help for the house over her protests, insisting that she needed to rest and take care of herself. Their daughter was born in early spring, right as the wildflowers began to bloom. The labor was faster this time, only a few hours from start to finish. When Dr. Harrison placed the baby girl in Maeve's arms, she looked up at Owen with tears of happiness. "A daughter! We have a daughter!" Owen was crying too, looking at his little girl with the same wonder he had shown Daniel. "She is beautiful. She looks like you. She has your nose." Poor thing. They named her Margaret Rose after both of their mothers and called her Maggie from the start. Where Daniel had been an easy baby, Maggie was demanding and particular, wanting to be held constantly and objecting loudly to anything that displeased her. "She knows what she wants," Rosie said with a laugh as Maggie wailed from her cradle. "That one is going to run this ranch someday." "Heaven help us all," Owen said, but he looked proud. Life settled into a new rhythm. The days were full and chaotic with two small children, but also richer and more meaningful than Maeve had ever imagined possible. She watched Owen transform from the closed-off, lonely man she had first met into someone open and loving, a devoted husband and father who was present and engaged in every aspect of family life. Daniel took his first steps just before his first birthday, toddling across the kitchen into Owen's waiting arms. Maggie followed suit months later, determined not to let her brother do anything without her. They were different in temperament. Daniel was careful and thoughtful, while Maggie was bold and fearless but devoted to each other from the start. "I want more," Owen said one night as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset while the children played in the yard under Rosie's watchful eye. "More children, more life, more of everything. I spent so many years closed off and dead inside. Now I want to fill every moment with as much living as possible." "How many more are you thinking?" Maeve asked with amusement. "I do not know, however many we are blessed with. This house has 6 bedrooms. We should fill them all." They did not quite manage 6 more children, but they came close. Over the next 8 years, Maeve gave birth to 3 more babies, another boy they named Thomas Owen, and then twin girls, Sarah and Elizabeth. The house that had been so empty and silent when Maeve first arrived was now full of noise and laughter and the constant chaos of 5 children. The ranch prospered along with the family. Owen's careful management and Maeve's business acumen made them one of the most successful operations in the territory. They expanded their land holdings, improved their breeding stock, and became respected members of the community. Owen was even elected to the territorial legislature, though he insisted Maeve accompany him to Carson City for sessions, refusing to be separated from her for extended periods. "Remember when you said you did not want companionship?" Maeve teased as they prepared for one such trip. "Now you cannot stand to be away from me for more than a few days." "I was an idiot. Thankfully, you were patient enough to give me time to figure that out." The children grew up wild and free, learning to ride almost before they could walk, helping with ranch chores as soon as they were able. Daniel showed Owen's talent for working with cattle and Maeve's head for numbers. Maggie was fearless, often found climbing trees or racing her horse across the range, giving her parents gray hairs with her adventures. Thomas was gentle and artistic, spending hours drawing the landscape and the animals. The twins were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into mischief together. "We certainly did fill this house with life," Owen observed one chaotic dinner when all 5 children were talking at once, arguing about who got the last piece of bread and whether the horses or the cattle were more important to the ranch. "We did. No regrets, not a single one. He reached across the table to take her hand, a gesture that still sent warmth through her after all these years. Best decision I ever made was sending that letter asking for a wife. Best decision I ever made was answering it. When Nevada achieved statehood in 1864, the family celebrated with a party at the ranch, inviting all the neighbors and ranch hands for a barbecue and dance. Maeve watched Owen play horseshoes with the older children while Rosie helped her keep the twins from eating too much cake, and felt profound contentment settle over her. "You look happy," said Martha Simmons, who had become a genuine friend over the years once she got past her initial judgment. "I am. Happier than I ever dreamed possible when I stepped off that train 14 years ago, terrified and alone. Owen is a different man than he was back then. You brought him back to life. We brought each other back to life. That is what love does. It makes you more than you were alone." As the sun set and the dancing began, Owen claimed Maeve for a waltz, just as he had at that New Year's party so many years before. But this time there was no awkwardness, no uncertainty. They moved together perfectly, two people who had learned each other so well they could anticipate every step. "Do you ever think about that first Christmas?" Owen asked as they swayed to the music. "When you decorated the tree and I could barely look at you because I was so afraid of letting you close, sometimes, mostly to marvel at how far we have come. I was so scared. Scared that if I let myself care about you, I would lose you the way I lost everyone else I loved. I thought keeping my distance would protect me from more pain. And now I know that loving you, building this life with you, having our children, it is all worth any risk. I would rather have one day of this happiness than a lifetime of the empty safety I had before you came." The song ended, but they remained on the dance floor, holding each other as a new tune began. Their children ran past, chasing each other in some elaborate game, and Maeve felt Owen's chest rumble with laughter. "Our wild things," he said fondly. "I hope they understand someday how much joy they have brought us. They will understand when they have children of their own." That is how it works. As the years continued to pass, the children grew into remarkable young adults. Daniel took over more and more of the ranch operations, showing the same dedication and work ethic as his father. At 20, he married the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a practical girl named Lucy who was not afraid of hard work. Maeve watched her son exchange vows and thought of the young woman she had been, stepping off the train into an uncertain future. Maggie, true to form, refused several marriage proposals before finally accepting one from a young lawyer in town who was willing to let her continue helping run the ranch even after marriage. "I am not giving up who I am just to be someone's wife," she declared, and neither Owen nor Maeve would have expected anything less from their fierce daughter. Thomas surprised everyone by going east to study art in San Francisco, but he came back after 2 years, declaring that while he loved painting, he loved the ranch and Nevada more. He set up a studio in one of the outbuildings and made a comfortable living selling landscapes to Eastern buyers who romanticized the West. The twins were still young enough to be at home, but already showing distinct personalities. Sarah was interested in medicine and talked about becoming a doctor, while Elizabeth wanted to be a teacher and had already started helping educate the children of ranch families. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Maeve with a trip to San Francisco. It was the farthest she had traveled since coming west, and while the city was exciting, she found herself missing the open spaces of Nevada. "Are you bored with the ranch?" Owen asked one evening as they watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. "We could travel more if you want. We could see the world. The ranch is not boring. It is home, And while traveling is nice, I would always rather be there than anywhere else. Even after 20 years of the same view, the same routines, the view never gets old. And our routines have changed constantly as the children grew and the ranch evolved. No, I am perfectly content with our life exactly as it is. Back at the ranch, they settled into a new phase of life. With the older children married or pursuing their own interests, the house was quieter but still full of activity when grandchildren started arriving. Daniel and Lucy had a son first, then twins of their own, keeping the tradition alive. Maggie and her husband had a daughter who showed every sign of being as stubborn as her mother. Owen was a doting grandfather, spoiling the grandchildren shamelessly and teaching them about ranching just as he had taught his own children. Maeve loved watching him with the little ones, seeing the same patience and gentleness he had shown their own babies. "We are old," Owen said one evening as they sat on the porch, their favorite spot for over 2 decades. His hair was more silver than dark now and lines creased his face, but he was still handsome to Maeve, still the man she had fallen in love with. "We are not old, we are seasoned." "Seasoned," he laughed. "I like that, seasoned like a good cast iron pan. Exactly, better with age and use." He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together the way he had done thousands of times over the years. "Do you remember what I wrote in that first letter? That I did not expect companionship or affection. I remember. You were quite clear about wanting a business arrangement and nothing more. I was such a fool. I was so afraid of being hurt that I was willing to settle for a life half-lived. Thank God you did not let me get away with it. Thank God you were willing to try. You could have kept me at a distance forever if you had really wanted to, but you let me in, even though it scared you. Best decision I ever made. Well, second best. First best was sending for you in the first place." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, one by one, filling the vast Nevada sky. An owl hooted from somewhere near the barn, and they could hear cattle lowing in the distance. The sounds of home, of a life well lived. "What do you think your younger self would say if he could see us now?" Maeve asked. Owen considered the question. "I think he would not believe it was possible. That lonely, closed-off man who spent all his time running from his own feelings. He could not have imagined this much happiness. He would not have believed he deserved it. And now I know that happiness is not about deserving. It is about being brave enough to reach for it when it is offered, being willing to be vulnerable even when it terrifies you. You taught me that. We taught each other. I was just as closed off in my own way, just as convinced that love was not possible for someone like me. We healed each other. As they grew older, they gradually handed over more of the ranch operations to Daniel and the other children. Owen still rode out most days to check on things, unable to fully retire from the work that had been his whole life for so long. But he also made time for other things, reading the books he had never had time for, helping Thomas with his painting, playing with grandchildren, and spending quiet evenings with Maeve. They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by family 5 children, their spouses, and 12 grandchildren at last count, with more surely on the way. The house was chaos, exactly as it should be, filled with the noise of multiple generations. "To think this all started with a letter," Maggie said during dinner, raising her glass in a toast. "A cold, business-like letter that made it sound like Papa wanted a housekeeper, not a wife." "I did want a housekeeper," Owen admitted to general laughter. "I was too stupid to know I needed so much more than that. And Mama was brave enough to come all this way not knowing what she would find," Daniel added. "That took real courage." Maeve looked around the table at all the faces she loved, at the family that had grown from that initial spark of connection between 2 lonely people. I was terrified when I stepped off that train. I had been told I would be alone, that I was entering a business arrangement with a man who did not want companionship. But your father proved everyone wrong. He proved that walls can come down, that hearts can heal, that love can grow in the most unexpected places. You both proved that, Thomas said. You proved that taking a chance on each other, on love, on building something together, that is what life is really about. Later that night, after all the guests had gone to bed and the house had finally quieted, Owen and Maeve returned to their porch, their sanctuary. They had added a swing over the years, and they sat together now, rocking gently, wrapped in a blanket against the spring chill. 30 years, Owen mused. It feels like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean. Sometimes I feel like that scared girl stepping off the train was someone else entirely. Other times I remember it like it was yesterday. Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish had been different? Maeve thought about it seriously before answering. No, not one. Every hard moment, every challenge, every fear, they all led us here to this life we have built. I would not change any of it. Neither would I. Owen kissed her temple. You are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. More beautiful now than the day you arrived, because now I know you completely. I know your strength and your kindness and your capacity for love. I know the sound of your laugh and the way you hum when you are concentrating on something. I know how you always wake before dawn and how you cannot resist picking wildflowers when we ride. I know you, and loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Tears streamed down Maeve's face. After 30 years, he could still make her cry with his words. I love you, Owen Patterson. I loved you when you were too scared to love me back, and I love you now, and I will love you for whatever time we have left. Forever, Owen said firmly. We have forever. They sat together watching the stars. Two people who had started as strangers brought together by practicality and loneliness, who had become partners, lovers, best friends, parents and grandparents. They had built an empire together, not just in land and cattle, but in love and family and legacy. The ranch would go on after them, passed down through generations, each adding their own stamp while maintaining the foundation Owen's parents had started and Owen and Maeve had strengthened. The land would endure, harsh and beautiful, demanding and rewarding in equal measure. But more than the land, more than the cattle or the house or any material thing, they had created something eternal, a love story that had started with a cold letter and a desperate hope, that had bloomed against all odds into something magnificent and lasting. As the moon rose over the Nevada mountains, painting everything in silver light, Owen pulled Maeve closer. She rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong against her. This was home. Not just the ranch or the house, but this man, this moment. This love they had built together from nothing but faith and courage and the willingness to be vulnerable. The mail-order bride who had been told she would be alone had found instead a devoted cowboy who had proven them all wrong. Together, they had created a life beyond anything either of them had dared to dream, a love that would echo through generations, a legacy of courage and hope, and the transformative power of opening your heart even when it terrifies you. And as they sat together under the vast Nevada sky, surrounded by the land they loved and the family they had created, Maeve knew with absolute certainty that every risk had been worth it. Every fear overcome had led to greater joy. Every moment of vulnerability had strengthened the bond between them. She had come west expecting loneliness and found love instead. She had prepared herself for isolation and discovered community. She had steeled herself for a life half-lived, and instead found one overflowing with purpose and passion and profound connection. The devoted cowboy had indeed proven them all wrong. He had proven that love could heal the deepest wounds, that walls could come down, that two broken people could make each other whole. He had proven that the greatest risks often bring the greatest rewards, that vulnerability is strength, and that opening your heart is always, always worth it. As sleep began to claim them both, comfortable and content in each other's arms, Owen whispered one last thing. "Thank you for answering my letter. Thank you for taking a chance on a broken cowboy who did not know what he needed. Thank you for loving me into being whole again." "Thank you for letting me," Maeve whispered back. "Thank you for proving that love is possible, even when it seems impossible. Thank you for being brave enough to let me into your heart." They fell asleep there on the porch swing, wrapped in each other and in 30 years of shared history, dreaming of the future their children and grandchildren would build, knowing that the foundation they had laid was solid and true. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first awkward conversations, their first tentative steps toward each other, their first kiss, their wedding vows, the births of their children, and every moment of joy and sorrow in between. The land stretched out around them, eternal and enduring, cradling the ranch that had brought them together, and the love that had made them whole, in the end. The mail-order bride who had expected loneliness had found the deepest connection two people could share. The devoted cowboy who had sworn off love had discovered it was the only thing that truly mattered. And together, they had built a life that would stand as testament to the power of hope, courage, and the willingness to believe in love even when everything suggests you should not. Their story was not one of instant passion or love at first sight. It was better than that. It was a story of two damaged people who healed each other, who chose each other every day, who built something lasting from the ruins of their separate griefs. It was a story of patience and persistence, of small moments of connection that accumulated into a lifetime of love. As the Nevada night embraced them, the ranch sleeping peacefully around them, Owen and Maeve rested in the certainty of their love, in the solid reality of the life they had created together. They had proven that mail-order marriages could become true partnerships, that walls could come down, that lonely people could find each other even in the vast emptiness of the West. The devoted cowboy had proven them all wrong, yes, but so had the mail-order bride. Together, they had proven that love was always possible, always worth fighting for, always the answer to the deepest human need for connection and belonging. And that truth would echo through every generation that followed them, carried forward in the stories their grandchildren would tell their own children, in the legacy of love and courage they left behind. The ranch would endure, the land would remain, but more important than any of that was the love story at the heart of it all, a story that began with a cold letter and became a testament to the transformative power of opening your heart to another human being. This was their happily ever after, earned through courage and patience and unwavering commitment to each other. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest and overflowing with love, exactly as it should be.